What would you do if you found him? Your brother. He's a coiled viper, and you are hungry and broken and spent, and we are alone. If we were to be discovered... Stop telling me what I can't do!
This is his fault. Everything. Every one of my miseries is of his making, and I swear before the warrior himself, I'm going to find him and fucking kill him, or die in the attempt.
Welcome back to the official Game of Thrones podcast, House of the Dragon. I am Jason Concepcion.
And I'm Greta Johnsen, and man, Aegon is not happy, eh?
He's upset. He's hangry.
He just needs a
full
snack
meal.
and a nap.
There is trouble brewing in Westeros today. We're talking about the 5th episode of Season 3, which was written by Philippa Goslett and directed by Nina Lopez-Corrado.
And we are very excited to break it down with some incredible guests. First, we're going to head over to Harrenhal and talk with our pals Ewan Mitchell, who plays Prince Aemond Targaryen, and Gayle Rankin, who plays the wonderful Alys Rivers.
And then we will break down the episode with director Nina Lopez-Corrado.
They are an insult to my sons, a challenge to my very legitimacy.
You are the Queen of Dragons. Your strength is your legitimacy.
Okay, obviously there's a lot to break down in this episode.
Yes.
I think we should start in the Riverlands. Things are getting pretty brutal there. Mm-hmm. Criston Cole going a bit rogue.
Well, you like a commander with some initiative, some improvisational acumen and an ability to stick to the task.
Sure.
Right? He's staying on mission.
It's a small but scrappy army. They're attacking at night.
I think he's been very effective. He understands that he can't fight the combined river host with the winter wolves. And so he just wants to slow them down, keep them from reinforcing the queen's other forces, and just keep them looking over their shoulder. And it's effective. It's clearly effective.
It is clearly effective, but I mean, you also can't help but think about what Roddy the Ruin says, right? Which is essentially they're just biding their time. It's not going to end well here.
It's not going to end well. There's no one coming to help them.
And those poor little horses.
Oh, with the crow's feet? Yeah, that was really sad. You just got to kill the horse? You can't bandage up the foot? I'm not a horse person, so I don't know how it works. But that's it? You just got to cut the horse's throat after that?
You have ridden, didn't you go to horse camp or something?
This was a long time ago. I did. And I was great at it. Yeah, it's quite a harrowing march. And I think the fact that Oscar Tully and his lieutenants decide, let's fight fire with fire, tells you how effective this sort of tactic is. At a certain point, it becomes clear, I think, that to Gwaine, certainly, that Cole is going down with this ship, so to speak. And, Gwaine does everything that he can think of to try and pull Cole out of this funk. Hey, come to Old Town. You could live and work there. It'll be great. We could use a guy like you. And none of it seems to work. What do you think is driving Gwaine to try and rescue Cole from this?
I mean, I think Gwaine genuinely likes him.
Yeah.
I have to say, I think the performance of Fabian Frankel and Freddie Fox is phenomenal, especially in this scene. You get the sense that they really have formed a camaraderie with each other and a respect for each other.
It's kind of a one-way camaraderie, but I agree with you.
Is that just because Criston Cole is completely nihilistic at this point?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think you're right. Cole, certainly
There's something.
There is something. Whatever passes for warmth in his current state of pure depression. He speaks to Gwaine like an equal. So that's a thing. And then Gwaine certainly, I think, sees Cole as, it's an injured animal that he wants to take care of or something. So word of fighting in the Riverlands has made it to King's Landing, where Queen Rhaenyra's government is just kind of lurching from crisis to crisis. We've also meet a new member of the small council, Sabbath Frey.
She's sassy.
She's like, where's my money? We had a deal. What's up? She got a point. I have to say, too, we can't let Jace's contributions kind of go undiscussed. The phrase, the fact that the Northmen were able to quickly get into the battle was because Jace negotiated that crossing at the Twins.
Yep.
And even getting going to the north and treating with Lord Stark, getting the Northmen involved, like that was all him. And, he was an impetuous kid, but man, they could use his diplomatic skills right now.
Yeah, I feel like Rhaenyra is very lacking in people with diplomatic skills around her in general.
Yeah.
So how do you think she's handling the stress of it all at this point?
Not great, but honestly, like what is good? There's no money.
Yeah.
She set up Manderley as a total fall guy to take the blame for the fact that there is no money, but that doesn't solve the fact that there's no money. She's got everybody asking for something different.
Yeah.
And there are murders taking place in the Capitol and anti-government graffiti, and she can't figure out like how that's happening. She can't get to the bottom of it.
Yeah.
It's hard to know where to start. Like, I think if you're Rhaenyra.
I mean, I do think getting the cats was a very good decision.
They're everywhere now. They're underfoot.
That's
everywhere.
okay. I would rather have a million cats and a million rats, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very cost-effective solution.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I love that Sabbath the Frey's reaction to her first small council meeting is like, oh my God, is this what it's like all the time? Like, you guys are a mess. Bring
talks
the
a lot of
little
shit.
balls back.
I mean, it is a mess. It's all a mess.
Everybody's talking over each other. Manderley's sniping about this.
Yeah.
Daemon's throwing things. Let's get it under control. Let's bring some order to these proceedings.
Yeah. Okay, so speaking of Daemon.
Yeah. Things are tough for the City Watch right now. Let's listen to a clip of Daemon trying to inspire the troops.
I look to you now to uphold your vows to the city and to the throne. Trust in your queen, and I pledge you, you will be repaid twice over for the sacrifices you make now. And in the years to come, as Dawn finally bends the knee, as Rhaenyra's great empire grows and the 7 kingdoms become 9, become 12, become the new Valyria. When I return with wagons spilling over with silks and silver, who will be the first to celebrate the conquest?
It's a good speech.
Would that have worked on you?
I don't know. I think we need like a truth-o-meter on that. You know what I mean? It's like,
Truth of it.
I mean, they're nice words, but like, can he really promise all that stuff?
I mean, clearly no, but it also feels like, what's the choice? It's like, if you're in the City Watch, your choice is between having no job and no prospects.
Sure.
And having a job.
And no prospects.
But like the potential for prospects.
Potential for
like,
prospects.
even if he can't deliver, even if he delivers on half of that, that's pretty good. Wagons of silks, I'm in.
I mean, yes, the problem is just, like the check is in the mail.
Yes, yeah.
Like eventually, like even just from the point of view of morale, like he can't give that same speech over and over and expect it to work.
It's very, very true. I think that the difference being that, Daemon created the City Watch in this form.
Yeah.
They exist in this format because of him. He organized them in this way. He gave them the iconic gold cloaks. They are all loyal to him because he has delivered for them in the past. So to the extent that he's spending capital right now to get them to keep working for free and risking their lives for free and potentially get gutted for free, his ability to do that is based on the fact that he has, delivered for them in the past. So I get why it works in this moment.
Well, and they have delivered for him too. I mean, they're the ones who helped Rhaenyra get to the throne.
They couldn't have done,
Yeah.
couldn't have done it without them.
No.
Yes.
So how surprised were you by the end of this episode? We get some entrails on the table.
I was quite surprised because that's a lot of guys. That's a lot of City Watch guys that are in that room. They lose a lot of men, including Commander Luther Largent. And you have to imagine that the rest of the guardsmen are like, well, I don't know. Am I going to live to get the jewels and the silks and the
That's
gold
the
and
thing.
the new lands in the growing empire of New Valyria? Like, I just don't see it.
Yeah, I feel like it's one thing to be asked to work without pay
Yeah.
if your job isn't very risky, but then for that to be added on top of it is just like,
Yeah.
no.
Well, we learn that the violence is being fomented by supporters of none other than Daeron, or as his supporters are calling him, and as Ormond is calling him, King Daeron. Shouts to Daeron getting his own meme coin.
Yeah, he got a little coin. He's
Got
on
a
money.
coin. He was very surprised by this.
Uh-huh.
What did you think? Wise decision on Ormond's part?
I mean, I suppose. I think it's pretty clear that Ormond thinks of Daeron as a chess piece that he's in charge
Yes.
of. And so is, I get Otto Hightower vibes a lot from Ormond.
For real.
In the case of like, how can I get as much power as possible through these other people who are tangential to power,
Yeah, there is a almost a desire to stay in the shadows and have someone in front.
Yes.
You get from Ormond.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. Like, certainly the fact that Daeron wasn't asked if he would like a coin minted with his face on it.
Right. This isn't about what Daeron wants at all.
Not at all. I think suggests strongly to Daeron that he is a mere chess piece or a Cyvass piece. We should say.
Oh, yes. I appreciate that.
Let's actually jump back to King's Landing for a minute because we have to talk about Alicent and Helena. Let's actually play the clip of Alicent and Helena talking about the moon tea.
Think of it as a cup of tea. Nothing more.
But it isn't.
No, it's not. Listen to me. It is a blessing. It is a remedy taught to the maesters of the Citadel. It has delivered me from disgrace and ruin. It has delivered Rhaenyra herself when she was young, and it will deliver you too. Helena, please, listen to me. Will you bear a child who will be never more than a hostage or a pawn?
It's mine! It's my own! It's mine!
What was your reaction to that?
I mean, it's devastating.
Yeah.
I do want to shout out to season 1 of House of the Dragon when he called it Plan T.
Plan T. Plan T. It's a very useful potion.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't help but feel terribly for Helena. I mean, she's right in everything she says. And at the same time, the reality of the situation is even more dire than I think Alicent is conveying it in that moment.
Yes.
I think she could be even more stark about the fate that probably awaits Helena and the child. In particular, if the child is a boy, that's going to be a rallying point for Rhaenyra's enemies, and Rhaenyra can say anything she wants about, I'll safeguard, it's like, you have my word, and, I'm not a terrible person. I'm not going to keep you hostage. Yes, she will. She will, and she will have to do it.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, even whatever Rhaenyra says, you can't believe it because there's going to be so much pressure on Rhaenyra to do certain things to maintain power, and that is clearly one of them.
Yeah, and the logic of the system says that you have to keep this child hostage, in particular if it's a boy, you're probably going to have to kill this child.
Yeah.
So, I think Alicent could be even more forceful there.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like this child, unfortunately, because of the world they're in, is like at best a liability, right?
If it's a son, this is the son of King Aegon and his queen. Like, period, point blank, that many people would see that as the rightful king of Westeros. To say nothing of the fact that a good portion of the people who believe that also think that a woman should never rule and can't.
Yeah.
So it's just the child is, from Rhaenyra's perspective, too dangerous to let run around uncontrolled. And I think the best that Helena could hope for is my child is a hostage, me as well as a hostage.
I mean, you think about it from Alicent's perspective, too. She's hoping to run away with Helena.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like you can, picturing childbirth, even in the castle, we know how dangerous that is, let alone if you've run away. Raising a baby, if you're like out on the run. Those things just also sound completely impossible.
I guess luckily Helena and Alicent have help. Orwyle is smuggling the Plan T in, taking a huge risk, don't you think?
Yeah. He seems to me to be sort of like above the allegiances.
He's like a hedging his bets kind of guy, I think.
Is that how you're reading it?
Yeah, I read it as, well, I serve the realm.
Right.
And I think within that is his own understanding that things are very tenuous right now. And who is on the throne right now might not be who's on the throne next week.
Yeah.
And so maybe we play nice with both sides as to the fullest extent that he can.
Yeah, that's smart. That's funny because I guess I hadn't thought there was even that much strategy to it. I was more just thinking of him as like a person who will help other people as long as he can afford to.
Yeah.
But I hear what you're saying too.
No, I think that there's that aspect to it. And he basically says, listen, it's gotten to the point where I have to inform the queen now about everything that's happening, because if I'm keeping stuff from her, then I'm basically done. Okay, so this is the last time.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. You know, like some part of him is doing this for completely altruistic, quote unquote, good reasons, I think.
Which, I don't know, maybe I'm just grasping onto that because we get so little of that in this world. It's like, he's a good one, right?
Yeah. What do you make of Myssaria's read on this situation?
Inconvenient heir?
Yeah, the inconvenient heir. But Alicent is like pretty effectively able to bamboozle Mysaria into believing that the tea is for her, which leads me to perhaps a hot take. I don't know. Is this a hot take?
Okay.
Is Mysaria good at her job? Sure, her whole job is intelligence. She has no contacts essentially outside of the castle. They're all inside the castle, except for a few, the brothel manager, Madame Sylvie, and some other like lowborn folks out in the city. But like even in the castle, she doesn't fully understand what's going on.
That's funny. I read that scene a little differently. I didn't read her as being bamboozled by Alicent.
Really?
I read her as seeing through it, but just like
being like,
whatever, as long as the plantee's gone, we're fine.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting.
Because I thought from Alicent, it was pretty like, oh yeah, just some guy. Like it was a guy. What do you need to know?
I can see that interpretation. I'm kind of staggered by Alicent's bravery all throughout this season so far.
She's making a lot of really tough choices.
Like, the entire plan to hand over King's Landing to Rhaenyra she did so much to make that happen. And then after that, it was like more asks and more asks. And now she's, with Helena is with child and she's trying to protect them. And she takes the, I think, reasonable but drastic step of like, let's just escape.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Aegon and Larys are looking for Aemond and Vhagar, but their relationship is rocky, to say the least. Let's play that clip.
You, who had every advantage in life. You who had every chance to shine. Firstborn son, Prince of the Realm, the finest tutors, the finest knights, instructing you on the sword. A dragon so beautiful they named him after the sun itself. You could have risen to greatness, but instead you trampled your birthright in the mud. You lazed, reveling in mediocrity, fucking anything in sight and drinking yourself into oblivion with your sycophantic friends. I will tell you the truth. You were a terrible king. But worse than that, you are a terrible man.
I kind of love that speech.
It was a good one. It was a really good one. And I think it also underlines a kind of like basic fact about people, which is everybody thinks they're an underdog. Even Aegon is like, I'm running uphill against all these obstacles that are in my path. And I think, the thing I love about this speech is when he says, like, even the dragon is so beautiful that they named it after the sun. Are you kidding me, guy? Come on.
Yeah.
Look at you. How do you think Aegon is receiving this?
I think this is hitting Aegon. I think he's hearing it. And I think he's probably hearing it for the first time in his life, right? I mean, I certainly feel like when he's heir to the throne, you know, I mean, like Alicent called him out a little, but there comes a point where if he's king, there's not much you can do anymore. And I feel like this is that point in the arc where like he's got to hit rock bottom. And to be told not only you were a terrible king, but you're a terrible person is like, damn.
But also it's like terrible person, come on. Dime a dozen out here. Am I wrong? Am I wrong, Larys?
You think that's how he's hearing it? He's
I
like,
mean, you know, Larys is... Did we not see Larys kill multiple innocent people for not great reasons in season 1? Oversee the torture of various human beings? I don't disagree, though. I mean, I think he's correct. But what's interesting is, like, the definition of good man. Like, what does... I think Larys means by that. You can do all sorts of terrible things if that is what your duty says that you have to do in order to uphold the honor of your house or the legacy of your family or the security of the realm. But if you do terrible things for no good reason, for no reasons of duty, no reasons of honor, then you're just kind of a piece of S.
Yeah. Oh, are we not cursing anymore?
I don't know.
Just like that?
You're just kind of a piece of shit. It had been a little while, so I didn't know if I could still do it.
Do you think that speech was calculated on the part of Larys? Or do you think he was just that fed up of Aegon's shit that he couldn't help himself?
You know, yes and no.
Right? He's such a calculating person.
Yeah. I think that on one hand, he had just like had enough of this guy and the burn smell and crying and limping around and complaining.
I mean, he has put up with a lot
this
of
and that. He has, you know, and it's like, you know, just like not lying when he could have lied and gotten past Rhaenyra's men, like a million things. He's just annoyed.
Yeah.
On the other hand, you don't just freestyle this. He's been thinking about this one. It's been gestating. So I think that it's both, you know, I think that it's both a calculated speech that he's been writing in his mind for as long as they've been on this terrible journey.
If not before, really.
If not before. And also, he's just kind of like at his breaking point right now. Because it's like, you know, he is the king. You shouldn't say this stuff to him.
No, not. Very few people could get away with saying that to him.
Yeah. After this scene, we go back to Rook's Rest and we learn that what a survivor. Tywin Lannister
did not see that one coming.
Despite 60 to 75 pounds of armor that Lohar told him not to wear, survived the Battle of the Gullet. And then Janos figures out who Aegon is because he finds his crown in his bag. And Aegon has to gut him.
Has to gut him?
Come on, what else is he going to do? Be like, hey, keep it quiet. And I'll carry more buckets of piss. I don't know, like what...
Okay, you're right.
I think he has to gut him in that moment. Sadly, I'm very sad to say that.
Do you think there's also some like, I'm really sad about that speech Larys gave me earlier, and so I need to kill someone to get it out?
I think that there was probably a little bit of that. I'm sure it felt good.
Right.
I'm sure the dagger felt good going in.
Some catharsis there.
Yeah. Were you shocked to see Tywin Lannister? I was.
Completely shocked. Were you?
I was shocked.
I was shocked too.
I couldn't believe it. I didn't think he had it in him. What I love about him showing back up too is, you know, Aegon and Larys are having this discussion. Aegon is like, you know, let's go here. I want to kill. I want to find my brother in Vhagar. And then Larys is like, no. Bravos, I've got money there. We can live in the style you're used to. And Tywin shows up and is immediately like, no. No more ships.
Don't do the boats.
No more pirates. No more boats. No more water.
I mean,
let's go over land to my castle and just not do water anymore.
That's so funny. I mean, it is. Yeah, it's not a bad argument, really.
Yeah. Before we get to our interviews, let's talk about what's going on in that spooky castle of Harrenhal with Aemond and Alys. He has been nursed back, or some ways back, to health, and assassins had shown up at Harrenhal looking for Aemond, on Rhaenyra's orders, of course, but they managed to fend them off in a flurry of scary bats. Based on what we've seen, what do you think the differences are between Aemond's stay and Daemon's stay at Harrenhal?
They seem very different to me. I mean, I guess in some senses they both had this time away to kind of like reframe their roles and everything. But I don't know. I mean, Aemond's doesn't seem quite as hallucinogenic, though I suppose it still is deeply creepy.
Yeah, I wonder if that's because Aemond is just physically weaker, and Alys doesn't have to break him down the way that she had to break Daemon down.
That's a very good point. Yes.
Because certainly she appears to understand beyond the physical wounds how to get Aemond to trust her, to be intrigued by her, is winning him over in a way that I think is quite fascinating.
And yeah, there doesn't seem to be as much ego there for Aemond as there was for Daemon in Harrenhal.
I mean, it's kind of hard to be egotistical when you've got like a hole in your kidney and you're bleeding out. And, and the only thing keeping you alive is this strange lady. And speaking of Aemond and Alys and the worst Airbnb in Westeros, we were very lucky to get to talk to two incredible actors who play them, Ewan Mitchell and Gayle Rankin. So let's go to our conversation with them. Ewan and Gayle, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having us.
Okay, let's talk about Harrenhal.
Yeah.
Very weird location. Yeah. I love how we just like constantly hear the dripping. I feel like we should.
It is dripping,
right?
Yeah,
it's just like wet all the time, right?
Dripping and actually wet. Just take from that what you will.
So yeah, what's like? I feel, especially for your character Alys, who is just like there all the time.
It's her house. Yeah. It's and how long has she been there?
Yes.
These are the questions that we all have. It's an amazing set. I love working on that. I'm obsessed with it. Everyone else is like, it's so cold and damp and dusty. And I'm like, what? Then my house?
My natural habitat.
Yeah. It really there's no other set I don't think that you can go onto on the show and just feel so kind of in the world. Because it's like 360, which is really cool.
Such a character in itself as well.
And it's character in the story. I mean, it's the most powerful position on the chessboard to kind of get to, and a lot's going to occur there.
So yeah, Gayle, can you talk a little bit about how Alys has sort of she deals with Aemond differently than she did with Daemon in season 2, and I'd love to hear about how you think of sort of what her presence is like for each of those characters.
Well, what I think is really brilliant about how the writers set it up is that it's not necessarily that Aemond and Daemon are different, which they are. Alys is different. Daemon, I think, breaks Alys's heart in episode 1. I think by kind of she assumes that that's her ally, that's her friend. He's going to help her out, and he doesn't. And I think she's different after that interaction. I think starts to look at her role as being different.
And you mean when she asks for Harrenhal?
When she asked for Harrenhal,
who are you kidding?
Yeah, it was a heartbreak. I think it's a breakup, and I think any person after a breakup, they're like, well, I'm going out for myself then. Got to take care of myself.
Aemond is in an incredibly vulnerable state here. We see him stripped of his dragon, injured. What was it like to kind of actualize this character who's so strong and strident and now is in this completely different kind of state of power?
I think that's it. He is in a light that we've never seen him in before. He is so vulnerable. He's not wearing his Targaryen blacks like we're so used to him wearing all the time, and he's physically weak and damaged by what happened to him in episode 2. And so he's really going to have to learn to really lean on other people to kind of help him back up onto his feet. And as an actor, it's just brilliant to be able to play that and to really explore that side to him that we haven't seen before.
How are you approaching these scenes in Harrenhal together?
I remember being nervous about it because I'm nervous about everything. And so I was like, hey, should we should we meet before and like rehearse and like talk about it and stuff? And like Ewan very sweetly like obliged. He was like, sure. Not in a bad way. We met, which was really cool because there's, you know, a lot to look at and process. Like we met and had a day or so like to just sit and like talk through them all. And
like on set?
No, offset. And like kind of talk about the arc of it and so I think it like gave us a bit of a bedrock of like a shared language. And so when, you know, we go on to set, like rehearsals were we could be so much more playful and risky, and that was really fun.
Yeah.
What do you think it is that they see in each other? Because it does feel as if there's things that each character is motivated by, and for some reason this connection between the two of them seems like the answer for both of them, but what the question is feels mysterious.
Mm-hmm. It's a kindred spirit, right? It's like they're able to identify with this kind of, they're both outcasts in a way, and they
yeah, there's actually very little pretense, which I think is really like when you know you're kind of in trouble with someone in a good way. You know, you're like, oh, I don't have to pretend. Oh, whoa, I don't have to pretend. But that takes time to build and find out. But I think there's something instinctual that they see in one another quite quickly where they're like, I actually think I can trust this extremely untrustworthy person. Like, I think we're both kind of generally like, I don't know who is trustworthy in Westeros, but like,
yeah, definitely. I mean,
that's how I felt.
Yeah, no, like the first words that like Aemond says to you in episode 2 is like, "Help me!" Like,
yeah, it's like an amazing jumping. It's like a big, great springboard, and I'm like, whoa.
It's probably the first time he's ever asked.
Yeah, it took Damon at least 6 episodes to ask me for help.
Yeah, 20 seconds.
For sure. That's so funny because, yeah, I mean, I do think a lot of it does have to do with Aemond's, like, he's in such a vulnerable state. Like, he has no choice but to ask for help.
Yeah, especially with what after he's just done as well by killing, you know, Simon Strong and wiping out his family in that room and then being like, help me?
Yeah.
Please. Please think about it.
It's also that weird thing where, like, you know, you see someone who's really vulnerable, but also you could imagine them taking care of you too. Like, there's a reciprocal thing that could be potentially happening.
To your point about the pretense, it strikes me that so many of the characters want Harrenhal because of what it represents as a seat of power. But Alys, it feels like she has a much deeper connection. Everybody else wants it, but they don't know what it entails, where it seems like Alys does. How do you, I mean, you just feel so comfortable there. Talk to us about your approach for that.
It's funny when you talk about it like that. It actually makes me emotional. It's so funny. It's like, because I think I've been, as an actor, like yearning for answers, you know, about this person. It's like, why? Why though? You know, which I think is really human. And I think it's like going home. And I think when I go home to Scotland, there's something kind of just undeniable about that's where I'm from, good, bad, ugly, you know? And I think it feels ancient to me, and it feels like a family member to me, and that it's always, places are really important like that.
Yeah.
They're like countries, history, like people come and people go. Places are not going anywhere, we hope. I mean, the way we're treating the world right now.
Yeah.
But it's like that, I think, for her. She doesn't have any family. She doesn't have any, you know, this place is her family.
How much do you think Alys is bringing, like, I can fix him energy to it?
When is she not? That's the question. I think, yes, she is. I think that's a part of what she's bringing. But I also think, like, something more complicated is happening. I hope that kind of comes across where it's like, can you fix me? I think there's a switching of places at a certain point where she's like, I don't think the fixing of people works. Like, I think she's realized that. And she's like, I know I kind of have to physically fix you right now because you're bleeding. Right. But, like, there's a longer game being played, I think, where it's like, I actually need you to fix me, I think.
We learned that Vhagar has abandoned Aemond in this episode. Aemond doesn't really show fear, but you can sense that he's shaken by this. What is he feeling about that?
Yeah, it's like a knight without their armor. You know, it's kind of Aemond. He's grown so accustomed and familiar with the idea that he's always had this backup with him. You know, going into any room, like it really does inform how, you know, Aemond plays things, because he can just capably sit back and just let people come at him, because at the end of the day, he's the one who's going to get back at them and just say, well, I got Vhagar, you know. And so there is a power there with that. And I think when he loses it, it really does just put into question who he is. And he feels kind of lost without Vhagar. And I think with Aemond getting back on his feet, I think it's very much he needs to be reminded of who he was before Vhagar, and very much like if he is nothing without Vhagar, he doesn't deserve to have her, you know. And it's very much about him relearning that actually I can still be powerful without Vhagar. I can be powerful with other people, and if I let other people into my life.
He tormented me. A childhood. I worshipped him. And yet our mother.
Sometimes the child that grieves her is the one a mother loves best.
Gayle, what's it like being arguably the weirdest character on a show with like a lot of pretty weird characters?
Honey.
It's gonna be kind of fun, right?
Yes, and also just it feels very natural to me because I'm that girl. Okay. I remember when I got the part, they were like, "So hey, there's no like other magical characters. There are dragons and you," and I was like, "Cool."
Yeah, it's so cool. Partly because it's like she could do anything at this point in the story, and I wouldn't be surprised. It's like, yeah, no, Alice can do that. Which is really cool.
Fully. And I'm like just pushing for more. I'm like, come on.
Yeah. Where's Vhagar? What have you done with Vhagar?
Yeah, like Vhagar abandoned him.
Yeah.
Yay.
Where's my baby girl at?
Yes, sorry. Yeah, it's pretty great.
There's quite a lot of killing of people that Aemond does in Harrenhal. Are those? How much preparation do you do for a scene like that?
We did. I think that, especially that scene in episode 5 with the bandits who come in. We had the choreography down for that.
A few months.
Yeah, way before we even started shooting, I believe. I believe it was something that Rhaenyra and myself, we choreographed. Yeah, before the cameras even started rolling. And you know, I love scenes like that because, you know, you can learn a choreography, you know, months in advance, but until you actually, you know, set foot on set and you feel the weight of the real black fire, or like to call back my fight with Criston Cole in season 1, until you feel the weight of that real Morning Star, you know, you realize that one hit from this thing, it's just going to dislocate your shoulder. And so, like with that scene, it was less about, you know, blocking the blows from Cole, but more about parrying them and like bouncing in and out of range. And all those things really do inform your character and the way that you fight. And with episode 5,
yeah, it's such an emotional fight.
Such an emotional fight. I mean, it was actually one of the last things we shot, I think.
Yes, we'd had kind of this whole history of this relationship, and it really feels like a kind of honor fight.
And like how I played Aemond prior to that, I was like, man, he's a lot more fatigued and a lot more desperate than what I initially imagined. And so it all informs your process. But I've got to shout out Rhaenyra for that as well. Like, he knocks it out of the park every single time.
Assistant coordinator, amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible.
So what do each of you think Aemond's time at Harrenhal is teaching him?
I think, like going back, like just learning, like finding himself a little bit, finding that he can't be this one-man army anymore. and he's got to be. Maybe he needs like a new drive and new motivation. Maybe sometimes having nothing to lose isn't the best course of action, but actually having everything to lose, like, raise those stakes for him, so to speak. Do you know what I
Totally,
mean?
and also like he's a big boy. Like he's not. He's not, and he doesn't need to be anyone's son. Like he's like he's his own man. Like what it means to kind of be a modern man, and like what that means. I think that's really cool, and to be. I can't say that. Never mind.
Yeah. It's a metamorphosis for sure.
You can't say that.
Can't say that.
Well, Ewan and Gayle, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes,
No, thank you so much
Thanks for having us.
That was a great interview. It's interesting. You can't help but contrast them with their characters. They do have, I don't want to say a similar chemistry, but I guess a much more warmer but also intense chemistry.
It seems like they genuinely like each other,
I agree.
which is nice.
I agree. And now let's go to our next interview with director of this episode, Nina Lopez-Corrado. Nina, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, we're a little over halfway through the season. Rhaenyra's on the throne and being buffeted by a million different crosswinds.
Rhaenyra is clearly being pulled in two directions at this point between Mysaria and Daemon. What's your read on that dynamic at this point in the story?
It's such an interesting dynamic between them at this point of the story. And I think the thing that some people forget when we're talking about Mysaria and Daemon is that they had a really intense relationship for many years. And now he is watching Rhaenyra kind of flirt, be tempted by Mysaria and this new relationship. And I think although he likes to play it off like he's not bothered by it or he doesn't feel threatened, deep down inside, I think there are much bigger emotions in Daemon going on there. And with Mysaria too, because I think that there's a part of Mysaria deep down inside that will always have a love for Daemon, even though he betrayed her. And so revenge is something that's obviously number one to her right now. But often people that we love that hurt us, it's so complicated and there's so many different layers. And I think Rhaenyra knows this. She knows all this stuff deep down inside. But Mysaria is so compelling and is so manipulative. Rhaenyra, who's already incredibly confused by so many different things that are going on right now in her life, is being drawn in by the temptation of Mysaria. And so everything that Daemon does, even the things that potentially aren't a threat to Rhaenyra right now, she feels like they're a threat because Mysaria is constantly in her ear, weaving this web.
Emotionally, where is Mysaria with regards to Rhaenyra? Because my read on it is, I don't think she's being manipulative. I think she's truly an advocate for the small folk and believes in what she says. But you also get the sense, or at least I get the sense, that, the mystique of the queen, the charm and beauty of the queen, that she's falling for her on some level.
I think you're absolutely right. I do think she has feelings for her. I think as the season progresses, her feelings become stronger. I think the temptation of being, the queen's right-hand woman is very appealing to her. And also being able to, the cherry on the top of the sundae is she also gets to kind of dig this knife into Daemon. Right. And every day that he sees them together, it's driving him crazy too. So I think it's multi-layered for her as well. And I do think she genuinely wants to make life better for the small people. But I think just like, any society, the higher you get up in the world, the more corrupt you see that it is. And so you try to fight for what you came for, but somehow you always get tangled up in the politics of the family or the government or whatever that is. And I think Mysaria is really struggling with that, struggling with how to accomplish her goals of making life better for the small people, but at the same time being able to make a better life for herself and what she has to do and what she has to give up in order to stay.
So yeah, how would you describe Daemon and Rhaenyra's relationship at this point?
Quite fraught. She feels like at every turn, especially in episode 5, he's defying her.
Yeah.
He's not listening to her. He's not letting her be the queen and guide from the throne. He wants to be the one making the decisions, making the choices, and he wants her to follow suit. And she's not wanting to follow suit anymore. So I think it's very, very complicated. She still hasn't gotten over the loss of Jace. She is kind of a ghost of herself right now, but at the same time, she is trying to, I believe, dig down deep to find the strength and the courage to be the queen that they need her to be. And Daemon's getting in the way of that. So I think as the season progresses, it's getting more and more complicated. And she's also has Mysaria in her ear.
Right.
You know, it's not good right now.
We got to talk about Criston Cole. He is on his mission in the Riverlands. There's some really interesting scenes with him in this episode. I think perhaps the most striking is when he's like standing in the dragon footprint. How did that moment come to be?
I think that part of the episode was one of my most favorite parts of shooting. We were up in Wales shooting all of that stuff, and the art department did such an amazing job of creating those dragon footprints. And I'm going to tell you, visual effects did very little in enhancing those. They did such a great job practically.
That's really cool.
And when we blocked that scene, we didn't have a lot of time to shoot it. It was kind of a bonus piece, actually. It wasn't originally in the script. But once we kind of pieced together the journey of Cole and his army, we realized that we kind of needed one more piece to see them kind of connect them with like the townspeople. So we had this location that we were already going to. So we decided, if we can fit it into the beginning of one of the days, maybe we can make it work. So we shot that literally in like 2.5 hours. And when I told Fabian, I'm like, just go up to the dragon footprint and then investigate it. And then he went down onto his knees and then he looked up and I was like, oh my God, that's perfect. Let's get the drone in there.
Yeah.
And so we put the drone in there and then the drone came up and that has kind of become a cool piece that they were using in all of the teasers for the season. So it's always funny how those pieces come about because that was all just kind of by accident.
That's great. One of my favorite parts of this slog through the woods is, it's obviously quite harrowing and everybody's taking it in stride, except for Gawain, who looks like he's having the worst time every single time we see him. And then we get this shot of Gawain picking a leech off of his leg. What was it like shooting that?
Freddie and Fabian were such troopers. I mean, it was miserable the whole time we were shooting that. It was actually raining. When we were going through the bog, when we first originally scouted that location, it was in the middle of summertime, so it was completely dry. And it was the location we just could not find. It was like, where are you going to find a bog, right? That you can actually shoot in, that you can get cameras in, and we couldn't. And we found one location. We were going to make it work. We were going to flood it ourselves. It was, in kind of a big valley. It was going to be easy-ish to shoot. And then Brian was like, nope, that's not going to work. You guys had to find something else. So then I was like, all right, find a real bog. And the locations department are amazing. And they found an actual bog. But when we scouted it, we could walk through it, right? But and it was fine. But I knew it was going to be difficult to shoot once we filled it with water and we added the towers. And so it took a lot of planning to figure that out. We had to basically bring in like a floating stage that we could put the crane on and that we can put all the personnel in. And I'm not joking. When you went in, one time I went all the way in, like I was going to give notes and I'm like running through the bog and they had to pull me out. Like it went up to up halfway up my stomach, you know, and they're like trying to like get me out of the bog, and that's how it was for the background and for Freddie and for Fabian the whole entire time, and they just kept on going back to one, and it was raining, and we had the rain towers, and I actually found out that I was pregnant the day before we shot that scene, and so I was like all high on like being excited about being pregnant, but nobody knew. And I'm like running through, and if they would have known that I was pregnant running through the bog like that, they probably would have killed me. But I think it's going to be like one of the top days of shooting that I ever did. And
wow.
They just did such an amazing job, and it turned out so beautiful. And then, you know, we went from the bog, and then the next scene, we see them kind of coming out the side of the mountain, and, you know, they realize that the bridge has been burnt down. And that was another like spectacular location, but also a very difficult location to get to. It was literally like through the woods, and there was like a tiny little footpath you could take to get through to where we were. And so locations had coordinated to like get all of this equipment out there, but we couldn't bring any of the big stuff. We couldn't bring like the crane or any of that. So we had a jib out there that the grips like masterfully put together so that we could get that shot of them coming out of the woods and reveal the river. But that day, it started raining like halfway through that scene. So it was like part of the coverage had rain, part of the coverage didn't have rain. And then like when the rain started, these little gnats came out. And I'm talking swarms of gnats. Like you couldn't, we were like trying to put these like masks on, but they were like getting through the masks, and the poor you know, Freddie and Fabian are like, you know, trying to be serious, and there's just like all of these bugs attacking them, which it's funny because when you watch it, obviously they're doing their jobs, they're professionals, you can't see the gnats, but those were all like really challenging locations. We really all felt like we went through war when we when we were done with those scenes.
Oof. So Criston Cole has said he doesn't expect to come out of this alive. What do you think, like, what does winning look like for Cole at this point and his men? I mean,
you know, I think for Cole, his ego just got in his way. He could have went with Gwaine. He could have still served the family. But I think deep down inside, Cole is so in love with Alicent, and he was so heartbroken that they were never going to be able to have the life that I think he fantasized about, that for him, the only glory is death. And Gwaine is absolutely heartbroken because he knows he's going to lose a good friend. I mean, these two men have been through battle together, and I'm sure they have a bond that no one would ever understand unless you went through it. The war has only just begun. It's going to get so much worse. And to have Cole kind of make that admission that he's done and he's going to go down in glory and he's going to fight until the end. I think it's heartbreaking for Gwaine, and I think it's heartbreaking for Cole too. I think it's just his ego is so big, he's never going to let those emotions show through. Right. And I think that was also hurtful for Gwaine.
Well, Nina, thank you so much for joining us. It's been great having you on.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so much fun.
And now, before we go, let's end with some parting words for the episode. Each week we share some parting words to a different character we think might need to hear those words. This episode, we are checking in on Gwaine Hightower, the G-Man, G-Dub.
GH.
G-Dub. Would you like to start?
Gwaine, get out of there, man.
Okay.
Just get out. I feel like Gwaine, you have so much potential. And you are just with the wrong group of people. And I know you're a Hightower. I know you believe in family allegiances. I know there are some pros to Team Green. But, like, don't ever talk to Ormond again.
Wow.
I mean, am I wrong, though?
I mean, I don't know. We don't know what their relationship is like. Let's see. What would I say to Gwaine? Okay. Gwaine, G-Man, G-Dubs, bring it in. Let me talk to you for a second. Throw my arm around you. You love Criston Cole, don't you? That's what's going on here. That's why you won't leave. You look at that beautiful Dornish face, that kind of bowl haircut that's working for him. And he's so sad in a way that you feel like maybe you can reach him there and rescue him.
I can fix him.
You can fix this broken knight. That's what's going on, isn't it, Gawain Hightower? Just let's be honest about it. And if it is what's going on, I think you got to admit it. I think you got to tell him. You got to tell him before you leave. Because he's trying to die, and you have a brighter future than that. But you got to admit it, or you're just going to regret it your whole, probably very short life. Okay, that's it for this episode. Don't forget to join us next Sunday night, right after episode 6 airs on HBO and HBO Max.
Yes. If you like what you are hearing and watching, don't forget to leave a rating and review on your podcast player of choice. You can join us on the Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon social media handles. And you can now watch us on Spotify, YouTube, and HBO Max. You can find me on Instagram at Greta M. Johnsen, or you can listen to my podcast, which is called Happy to Be Here.
And you can find me on Instagram at Network, NETW3RK, and you can listen to me on the podcast X-Ray Vision, or wait a second, the official Game of Thrones podcast, House of the Dragon, is produced by HBO in collaboration with Same Boat Studios. This podcast is hosted by Greta Johnsen
and Jason Concepcion, who is also the show's producer. The executive producers for Same Boat Studios are Gabrielle Lewis and Barry Finkel. Our senior producer is Ben Goldberg. Our audio engineer is Hannes Brown. And our video editor is Stefano Sanchez. Our digital content producer is In-Sung Huang. And our studio engineer is Javi Cruces.
Special thanks to Michael Gluckstadt, Allison Cohen-Sorokach, and Kenya Reyes from the HBO Max podcast team.
Thanks for listening. See you next week.